Manatee Springs Cave Diving Tragedy. On March 14, 2022, two friends, William and Harry, and their respective fathers, George and Jack, set out to dive at Manatee Springs State Park in Florida. This park is home to an extensive underwater cave system known for its challenging conditions. To legally access these caves, divers must possess full cave diving certification and be accompanied by a partner familiar with the system. Unfortunately, none of the four had full certification, only the introductory level. They decided to dive anyway, planning to enter at Freedman's Sink and exit at Catfish Hotel, a challenging route that formed a traverse through the siphoning system of the cave. The cave's natural flow would carry them forward, but returning would require swimming against the current. Each diver carried 2 air tanks with 3,800 psi, primary and backup lights, and dive computers to monitor vital stats. William and Harry led the way, with George and Jack following closely behind. Initially, things went smoothly. They passed the emergency exit at Sue's Sink, marked by a rope tied to a rock and light filtering through the water from the surface above. They continued toward their intended exit. However, at the end of the path near Catfish Hotel, they couldn't find the guideline leading up to the surface. They searched for the exit, but failed to spot any light or clear path. Confused and low on air, the group decided to turn back. George and William reached Sue's Sink just in time and surfaced at 12 p.m. Jack and Harry, however, missed the exit entirely. Their lights were too bright, which ironically masked the faint natural light from Sue's Sink, and large rocks further concealed it. Desperately, they kept swimming, trying to find another way out. Eventually, Harry spotted a familiar glimmer, the light from Freedman's Sink, their original entry point. He followed the guideline back and resurfaced at 12:20 p.m., one tank completely empty and the other dangerously low. His father, however, never emerged. William and George met Harry and pieced together what had happened. The Catfish Hotel exit was positioned above a double L-shaped passageway and lacked a proper ascent line, which is why they couldn't find it. At 12:50 p.m., rescuers arrived and found Jack's lifeless body just 100 feet from Freedman's Sink. He had traveled approximately 3,400 feet underwater and ran out of air at the very last stretch. His last recorded movement on his dive computer was at 12:17 p.m., just minutes before his son surfaced. Judan Cave Incident. On April 18, 2014, expert Chinese divers Wang Yuan and Wang Tao attempted to beat their personal depth records in Judan Cave, one of the deepest underwater cave systems in China. Their goal was to extend an existing guideline from 525 feet down to 558 feet. Given the extreme depth, this was already a risky undertaking, but both divers were highly experienced and had completed 15 prior dives in the same cave. They had meticulously placed air tanks at different depths beforehand, each filled with the appropriate gas mixture. Pei, a friend, remained at the surface as backup support. Yuan was responsible for keeping track of the guideline, while Tao placed arrow markers indicating the way back. As they descended, visibility was reduced to just over 6 feet due to prior rainfall. At around 538 feet deep, Yuan suddenly began feeling lightheaded and feared he might lose consciousness. They were only 13 feet from the end of the existing line, so he made the decision to turn back. But when they reached the place where the line was supposed to be, it was gone. In the panic of losing the line, they consumed air at a faster rate. Eventually, they managed to locate the guideline again, but Yuan had to switch from his deep mix cylinder back to a regular tank filled with surface air, which was highly dangerous at such a depth. By the time they ascended to 393 feet, Yuan began shaking uncontrollably. Tao was also in trouble. He had accidentally become wedged beneath a rock and was signaling that he was out of air. Yuan gave Tao his emergency mouthpiece, and Tao managed to free himself. They continued ascending, but their air was nearly depleted. Yuan pulled Tao upward until, at about 300 feet from the surface, Tao suddenly floated past him. Yuan realized Tao had blacked out. He chased after him, but couldn't find him in the murky water. He had no choice but to prioritize his own survival. He reached the next air station, switched tanks, and went back to search for Tao. Unable to locate him, and now running low again, he moved to a shallower air tank and again tried diving deeper. At one point, he blacked out but regained consciousness. Knowing he was in critical danger, Yuan ascended rapidly, cutting short his decompression stops. On the surface, Yuan vomited, twitched, and collapsed from decompression sickness. Tao's body was found the following day at a depth of 176 feet. Yuan survived after days in a decompression chamber. Agan Allwed Cave Incident. In 1974, British cave divers Roger Solari, 26, and Martin Farr, 23, set out to map the unexplored passages of the Aegon Allwedd cave system in South Wales. The mission was particularly risky due to its long, twisting underwater tunnels and multiple sumps, water-filled sections that required divers to swim through. Martin attempted the first trip alone due to Roger's injured knee. He successfully made it through sumps 1 to 3, measuring 249 feet, 82 feet, and approximately 850 feet respectively, and discovered an additional sump at the far end, which had never been documented before. 2 days later, on June 15th, both divers returned with extra tanks. Roger led the way through sump 4, but midway through, his guideline ran out. Despite the warning signs, they continued forward. Martin deployed his own line and pushed deeper. When he reached a gravel wall and a dead end, he turned back and found Roger still there, struggling. At this point, they had both exceeded their air usage beyond the recommended rule of thirds, which states that 1/3 of air is used to go in, 1/3 to get out, and 1/3 as a reserve. Martin signaled urgently to exit, but Roger, knowing he might not have enough air, swam off in search of an air pocket. Martin made it to his reserve tank, placed earlier between sumps 2 and 3. After waiting an hour, Roger still hadn't surfaced. Fearing the worst, Martin dove back into sump 4 and found the guideline severed at 430 feet. Roger had likely tangled himself trying to change tanks, cut the line, and became disoriented in the stirred-up silt. Despite immediate rescue efforts, Roger's body was not recovered until 1986, 12 years later. The location where they had hoped to find an air pocket was later named the Against All Odds Chamber. Martin never broke the rule of thirds again. If you're enjoying this video so far, make sure to like, comment, and subscribe. Let us know what kinds of cave exploration stories you'd like to see in future episodes.